Our top story today, just percolating here over the last 10 minutes or so at Cleveland Browns training camp, as Shedeur Sanders, who had such a great week last week and was in line to play a lot this week too for the Browns, maybe being the biggest story in the NFL, honestly, in the month of August, that could be questionable. He left practice earlier today, several reports say with an oblique injury. So Sanders held out from the practice today. With the games going on Friday, it would seemingly be very difficult to project him actually playing in a game this weekend. And with Kenny Pickett out and Dylan Gabriel out and Joe Flacco is really the only viable starting quarterback, that could mean Snoop Huntley plays this week. So keep an eye on that point spread for that preseason game coming up with the Browns this weekend. Meanwhile, three major sports books in Illinois, FanDuel, DraftKings, and Fanatics, have decided to take matters into their own hands with the state's new per wager tax by introducing transaction fees on each bet placed. If you raise the percentage, we are going to make our own money on charging fees to place bets. The Illinois Gaming Board clarified the per wager tax applies to all bets regardless of outcome, including those made with bonuses or even refunded on stake. FanDuel and DraftKings, facing the state's 40% revenue tax and 50% wager charge, may incur additional tax liabilities with these new transaction fees as well. Meanwhile, for those of you who are using the pay system called Venmo, which is certainly very popular, I use it occasionally. I used to use it a lot more. I know one person who's not going to be using it anymore. That's University of Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer. Do you hear this one? He's responding to these old Venmo transactions that he labeled as sports gambling on purchases that were surfaced on social media on his page on Twitter, otherwise known as X. Mateer denied ever placing any sports bets and said those transaction descriptions were inside jokes among friends. The transactions were from 2022 when he was a freshman at Washington University. For those unfamiliar with Venmo, you can label your transactions what you're purchasing with. So who knows how this ends up. The last thing that you want to do, by the way, on Venmo is make your transactions private. Why public? Who would ever want everybody knowing what you are purchasing online? It seems ridiculous. Okay, ridiculous money in the National Football League. I don't know. Would you call it that for James Cook? 4 years, $48 million. A running back gets $30 million guaranteed. So that Kyron Williams deal did become the precursor to the James Cook deal. $30 million is just above what Kyron got. And they're talking about him potentially playing every down. First, second, third down. Of course, they have Ray Davis in their backfield, too, who actually kicked an extra point. Did you miss that this weekend? Here's Brandon Beane on getting the job and the deal done, said it was not easy.
Yeah, I mean, these are hard. They're never easy. I think you just try and keep working at it. And, obviously this was something that we had conversations back in the spring. We had to push pause and, focus on the draft and other things. And something that we said we would try to revisit when we got to training camp. And, unfortunately, you never want to hold in or hold out or any of that stuff. You want it all. But at the end of the day, you guys know our motto here. We want to draft and develop and re-sign. And that starts with Terry Pagula giving us, you guys know all the money we've doled out this offseason, and this is another draft pick that we're proud of and excited to extend. And fortunately, late last night, we got it across the finish line.
Yeah, meanwhile, we'll wait to see what happens with the Buffalo Bills this week. Will Josh Allen play? Most indications point to yes this week. Najee Harris, running back for the Chargers, finally doing drills at Chargers practice. He's been out of practice since the early part of July. He had an incident with fireworks back on July 4th. Also, Jets apparently without Sauce Gardner at their practice today, suffering a calf issue. No word on that. Aaron Glenn's going to talk here after practice. I'm sure we'll get that for you soon. All right, the best story in sports right now, right? Unequivocally, has got to be the Milwaukee Brewers. Folks, they've won 11 games in a row, a huge feat in Major League Baseball. 4 runs off Paul Skeens, 2. 14-0 the final. Who hit home runs in the game yesterday? Bryce Terang, Caleb Durbin. How about this kid, Andrew Vaughn, they got from the White Sox, former first-round pick. He's been great. Christian Yelich, and also Sal Frelick. Yes, he hit a home run, too. After the game, Frelick talked about this long winning streak for the Brew Crew.
Sal, how do you describe being a part of this last not just 11 games, but really the last couple of months.
Yeah, it's been fun going out winning games. Everyone's clicking. Offense seems to be rolling, and really think it starts with our starters and bullpen who have done a great job. I think obviously you see we're scoring a ton of runs, but there's a lot of zeros and ones on the board every game, and that's a credit to them.
How big is it to set the tone like that against schemes with a leadoff home?
Yeah, wanted to make sure I went up and had a quality at bat first and foremost, and I think it was just a little bonus that I was able to get one over the fence there.
When you're putting together a streak like this, it's the consistency and repetition, but how do you do that in a game where there's so many facing different kinds of pitchers from at bat to at bat and from start to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's our job, I guess. There's a lot of credit that goes to our hitting coaches, Buffy, Connor, E.T., game planning these starters every day, bullpens on new teams that come in. We go up there fully confident, ready to go, committed to our plan, our approach, the one they give us. And as you can see, it's been working out.
Shohei Ohtani homered for the fourth straight game, but it really hasn't made a difference. For some reason, the Dodgers cannot beat the Angels. They've lost all 5 times to them, including yesterday. They rallied to beat them 7-6 in 10 innings. Dodgers seemingly at a breaking point with the Angels. They can't beat them, but how about a breaking point in the season? Here's Dave Roberts on that.
I feel like I don't want to say breaking point or anything, but kind of does it feel like things are starting to kind of build up when it comes to the losses, and maybe the pressure of getting back on track is coming a little quicker?
I don't know. I think that you just got to play better baseball. We got doubled off tonight. We got doubled off in a triple play situation. Just some things that we're also not helping ourselves, right, by playing good baseball. I think that tonight, I thought I saw some good things as far as Henriquez was really good tonight. Emmett found a way to get through 5 innings. But yeah, I mean, we still got to be better on all fronts. And now it's a new season. So, you look at the standings and we just got to play better baseball and find ways to win games.
Meanwhile, the New York Mets have a new all-time home run leader. It is Pete Alonso. He passed Darryl Strawberry last night, 2 home runs, and Mets beat the Braves 13-5. Also, big night for Roman Anthony of the Boston Red Sox. He's been great, and the Sox beat the Astros 14-1. Yankees get a big win yesterday as well. Judge, Stanton each go deep 9-1 over the Twins. Mariners win their 8th in a row. 1-0 win over the Orioles, and Ketel Marte hit a home run for the Diamondbacks as they beat the Rangers by a final of 3-2. In December, sports betting goes live in the state of Missouri. It may be the only state to legalize sports betting in 2025, but the good news is we have Sam McQuillan in the house to talk about that and also get to the very latest in New Jersey as well. Sam, thanks for coming on Newswire. Let's dive right in. December 1st is coming quick. I know the state of Missouri would have loved to have sports betting legal in September. They couldn't do that, but they will get the bowl games in, and they'll get the college football playoffs, and certainly they'll get the NFL playoffs and Super Bowl as well. But they could be, I guess, the only ones, it feels like, Sam, right, to go online this year?
Yeah, definitely. When you talk about, you have like 38 states that have already legalized sports betting, there's just not that many left. And the ones where it hasn't been able to happen, it's been the same kind of issues and roadblocks. The Utahs of the world, the Georgias of the world, doesn't look like it's changing anytime soon.
So what's the latest in Missouri?
So as you mentioned, Craig, Missouri has a December 1st launch date where it has to go live in December by that date. Sports betting has to be up. So before then, you have a procedural process. You have rules that have to be passed, rules that have to be regulated back and forth with the applicants coming in. And you also have to approve the applicants coming in. Today, there is a meeting going on where 3 sports books that are applying for licenses. You've got Circa, DraftKings, and FanDuel all making presentations to the state why they deserve to get one of 2 untethered sports betting licenses. Now, that word untethered is important because there are licenses up for grabs if you partner with the state's casinos or the state's pro sports teams. But to do that, you have to, agree to a deal with these entities and essentially pay the money and make less doing it. So you've got DraftKings and FanDuel, obviously two of the biggest sports books. If they don't get one of these untethered licenses, they could easily partner with one of the state's sports teams, one of the state's casinos. They have that relationship in place. For a company like Circa, which is much smaller, they kind of brand themselves as taking money from professional bettors, less like, kind of commercial bettors where they're not limiting people and they're, more of an option out there if you want to get a lot of money down, as opposed to being a big business that squeezes more money out of their customers. This is important for them because they don't have as much capital as those other two companies. But for those other two companies as well, it's also about, squeezing out competition, making sure that a smaller sportsbook like Circa maybe can't compete in the state. You've already got BetMGM and Bet365 that have partnered with the casinos and the sports teams in the state. They obviously come from companies with a lot of money, so it's not a problem for them there. But also today, not just the, application process, you're going to hear about the rules that are being put in place where you have this back and forth. Maybe a company says, here's why this rule shouldn't exist. Here's, how things work. Kind of this period where you hammer things out before it really goes live. So you got a couple other key dates to watch here as well. On Friday, we should hear when the winner is announced for one of these untethered licenses. And then in September, you're going to have the final application for the rest of the licenses that partner with the casinos and the sports books. November 30th, the rules should take effect. And then hopefully it's smooth sailing. December 1st, you've got a launch. And we're talking about a brand new big market that launches right kind of in the heart of college football season, bowl games, as well as NFL playoffs.
The other big story in sports betting this year has been these sweepstakes and prediction markets. And I know, Sam, you have an update in New Jersey as it gets ready to basically decide whether or not they're still going to be online and live here over the next few months. What's the latest there?
Yeah, really interesting development in New Jersey. A bill that would ban sweepstakes, casinos, and sports books was already passed by the Senate. It actually would have taken effect tomorrow, Thursday, with or without the governor's signature. He's declined to act on it. So there's a 45-day deadline. If he doesn't take action, it goes into effect. But because the assembly is in a recess right now, that deadline is basically on hold until lawmakers come back, which could be in November. We don't have an exact date for when the assembly will reconvene. So it's kind of this strange loophole that gives the industry, the sweepstakes industry, essentially more time to lobby for a veto, to hopefully try to do something to get the governor to take action. Now, I don't think that's likely, but it does kind of create this window for these sweepstakes casinos and sports books, which are essentially these unregulated online platforms that offer casino-style games. They allow people to make picks, much like a sports book, using virtual currency, but players can also play with real money that they deposit, as well as kind of this virtual currency that you can earn through promotions and different programs. So they operate this way to be ruled or be under the kind of the sweepstakes law that governs the U.S. as opposed to state sports betting laws or state online casino laws, which are much more strict. And a lot of players out there say that they basically do this because it feels like a casino. It feels like a sports book. I think 90% of players say that the games likely are gambling. You've had states like New York, Louisiana, Connecticut, Nevada, California. There's a lawsuit, all now kind of cracking down on these games, and New Jersey really just being the latest. But meanwhile, these two trade groups, which are really pushing to keep the games, the Social and Promotional Games Association, as well as the Social Gaming Leadership Alliance, this gives them more time to kind of make good on their issues or really outline their argument that they say the bill was kind of passed without hearing any, industry stakeholder, any feedback from the sweepstakes themselves, from the industry, and really appeasing kind of the, casino interest in New Jersey. Obviously, it's a big casino state. So if they can maybe make a better argument here, that could, throw a wrench into things. Otherwise, I would say whenever, the recess is over and the assembly gets back together, it probably will go in effect and be banned in New Jersey. But in the meantime, they're allowed to keep operating until it takes effect.
Let's close it out with a discussion that really helps responsible gaming, especially with this company called BetBlocker that allows people who simply don't want access to ads and be able to go online and bet. Maybe it's something to do with the individual personally, a new partnership involved there. And I just wonder, Sam, if this is the wave of the future too, because I know that there are a lot of folks out there who may have had experiences in the past and have just decided that betting is not for them.
Yeah, definitely so, Craig. I would say this is where the industry is trending. You've got BetBlocker, which is a free voluntary gambling blocking service, which launched in the United Kingdom in 2019, they block access to over 118,000 gambling sites and over 1,500 apps. Essentially, when you want to block yourself off, or you think you have a problem or you're overdoing it, you can either schedule a cooling off period where you can access these sites later on. You can schedule a period of the year, maybe football season, where you're going to go overboard, or you can just indefinitely block yourself, not just from one app like a DraftKings or a FanDuel, but from all these sites out there, as well as a lot of offshore and unregulated sites, which is very important because, when people don't have access to the legal market, they usually have access to the unregulated market. So yesterday, they announced a partnership with ROGA, which is the Responsible Online Gaming Association. We've talked about a couple times on the show. It's this new group that's being pushed by the top 8 U.S. sportsbooks. I think they represent about 90% of the market, that they've created to kind of pool resources together to combat problem gambling as a unit, as an industry, as opposed to just kind of on their own, which is pretty important because it's hard enough to get one kind of company on the same page with itself. So getting 8 on the same page is a really big development in the space as well. The fact that they've partnered with BetBlocker, which kind of does the technology they've been talking about for them. They've talked about having one sort of online clearinghouse where if you're blocked from one sports book, you can't go to another. They've likened it to getting kicked out of a bar if you've had too much to drink. That means you can't go and walk into another bar and cause a problem there. So, it's a small stepping stone. I think it's kind of hard to get these technological, a lot harder to get these things done than you would think, especially when you have all these companies coming together. But them partnering with a company that's been doing it for years in the UK, I think is really important. And hopefully it builds on more progress here when we talk about responsible gaming, when we talk about problem gambling, and what the industry can do to combat a problem that sometimes people see it benefiting from.
Sam, as always, great stuff. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm sure we'll catch up later in the week. Thanks for coming on Newswire.
Yep, appreciate it, Craig.